fall. Ghost moved to follow Buddy's team with the masks and gloves. Old Man said you're not going, Ray pushed Ghost back. Ghost let him, but scowled at Ray. You have to go with my team or not at all, Ray said, and if you smell sulfur or ammonia, you have to stay back and let Buddy's team handle it. They were going to raid the part of the guard base that Chase had never been allowed near. They weren't sure what they'd find there, but Ghost had told them it was probably either a drug lab or a whorehouse. His father was most ashamed of those trades. I'm going. With my team? Ray said suspiciously. Yeah, with your team, Ghost said. Good. Ray cuffed him on the back of his head as they walked toward the base. Ghost punched at him, but Ray slapped it away. We'll take cover and everybody go in at once. You said all the doors have the same mechanism, right? As far as I know, Ghost said. He grabbed at Ray's thick sleeve to try to get his punch in. Stop it! Ray reached in his long arm and cuffed Ghost's head again. Only I get to hit people when I'm in charge. You're not in charge of me, Ghost growled. Ray cuffed him again and Ghost stumbled forward. Fuck you, Ghost said. You're just upset you can't hit me, Ray said. I could hit you if I was really trying. Boys, please. Gray, Ray's slightly more mature friend, interrupted. Ray responded with a light punch to Gray's arm. Now's not the time, Gray said. It had been raining since yesterday and the streets were flooded. What had once been large middle-class houses were reduced to sagging haunts, stripped of materials in some places, crushed under by trees and power poles. It still all looked relatively undamaged compared to most of the city. Ghost slogged through in his Nikes that Timothy had given him. They were completely soaked and oddly bouncy. At least the water didn't seem to weigh them down much. They arrived at the barricade, looking around the corner of a building under the half cover of some cars parked by the sidewalk. They could see the door in the barricade, kept shut with chains. There were a few guards just on the other side of it, visible by movement, through some gaps in the sheet metal and stacked washing machines. At that moment, shooting broke out a couple blocks over. Buddy's team was already going in. Regina, do it! Regina had a grenade. Ghost instinctively cringed back, stuffing in his earplugs. He pulled out his gun, but he didn't take aim at the guards. Regina must have thrown the grenade because there was a massive boom that rumbled back across Ghost's arms, even though he was covered. Things flew into the sky and came hurtling back down. Ghost stayed close to the wall. The guards started shooting at them, and Ghost started creeping back. Shoot them, Ray shouted. Ghost, what are you doing? There's a big hole for us to advance through if we're fast. Ghost glanced at him. If he ran head-on inside with that gun out, he'd be forced to shoot someone, and he'd never done that before. Go, Ray shouted as the team charged forward. Ghost ran with them to the right, keeping as close to cover as he could. A shard of metal went snick down into the dirt past his leg. As the others slowed to fire into the guards that were fleeing for cover, Ghost raised his pistol and squeezed the trigger. The kickback knocked it up, and each consecutive shot went higher. He stopped, hid, and adjusted his grip. When he looked again, the others were past him. He jogged forward and hid behind the barricade itself, now that the guards had retreated. He was just ahead of the other shivers. He peeked around a corner and saw a guy frozen there, head down and fists clenched. He turned, raised his pistol, and fired low. As Ray came up, he fired repeatedly into the darkness of the laundromat behind the barricade. The glass windows shattered. He paused as Regina kicked aside shards stuck in the frames and stepped in. Everyone hunched their shoulders as they passed under the guillotine-like frames, full of heavy broken shards that threatened to drop at any moment. 3 or 4 guards had tried to shelter on the ground behind a laundry folding counter. They were all injured. Ray shot 2 and pointed at the third. He'd run out of ammo. Shoot him! The guy was a boy with no shirt on, covered in bruises from being grabbed, and with old bruises on his face, back, and knees. He was shot in the thigh. If he hadn't been screaming louder than anyone else in here, swashing around his blood on the fake tiles, he would have been kind of pitiful. This was the guy Ghost had shot at, he was pretty sure. I don't want to shoot him, Ghost said, without thinking about it. Ray glared at him. You sparing him because he's a guard? Please just kill me, the boy cried. It hurts. Ghost bit his tongue. Here, he said, holding out his pistol to Ray. You shoot him. Ray grabbed it and shot the boy carelessly through the side of the head. The boy kept screaming, somehow louder, grabbing his skull. Shut up, Ray shouted, stomping the kid in the face. But it didn't stomp in. though the nose and lips broke over the bones underneath. The fingers had broken over the cheekbones too, and he was screaming and pulling them back. Ray grimaced and crouched a bit, aiming more carefully. He shot the boy through the skull again. The noises changed. They sounded like a singing of wind over corners, but came out of the broken, bleeding face and jammed-in teeth. Ghost retreated, heart pounding like he was afraid. He didn't know whatever feeling it was, but he wanted to get away from the dying boy. He found a locked door leading to an office, but another one was propped partly open, and it led to the valley outside. The alley smelled like old piss. He went through, then felt gunshots rip the air beside his arm. He flinched forward, ducking and rolling into an adjoining building right on the other side of the 5-foot-wide alleyway. People in the room turned to see who had entered. A woman yelped in pain as she was struck. He only heard this because the room was dark aside from the light from the door, which suddenly slammed shut behind him. Someone had seen him and reached for him, but he bolted toward the other end of the room, eyes adjusting to blurry red lines of light across the far wall. Red curtains. He stumbled over people, quite a lot, mostly naked. The room was hot and smelled like infections. He slipped on something wet and fell onto his knee and thigh. He scrambled up with a grunt, hearing some people move away, and stomps coming toward him from the other side of the room. Some people were whimpering, some were cursing. More gunshots from outside. "This is a full-on attack," someone said. The door Ghost had come in by was thrown open, revealing the fact that the door he was trying to escape by was boarded over. It also revealed more of the room this time. "Everybody out," a man with a long stick said. He waved it. "Come on, workforce." Ghost followed the rush for the door. Half the others had their hands bound behind them. 10 or so people remained on the ground, groaning. Ghost's legs stung and dripped in a tickle down the side of his leg. He'd scraped it on something in the doorframe. The guards were seizing people by the arm and pushing them out one by one, making Ghost's exit jammed and slow. There were about 3 guards there. Ghost made it past the counter, which was covered in bottles, packets, powders, and needles. He tried to push forward past the others, hoping to not stand out by being last, but the guards grabbed them first. "You," the guard finally said, grabbing his arm and yanking him into the light. "I don't think I recognize you." Ghost wrenched his arm free with a hard twist back, dodged the swipes of their hands, and rushed past the guard on the right, hoping to dart down and rejoin his party. But a hard arm caught around his torso, just the right arm, but it pulled him off balance as the left hand came down with a hard pistol whip to the back of his head. And again, and again. "Kill him! Kill him!" the guy on the left said. It hit with the sound of the double thunk. Ghost blinked, and he was on the ground, fully collapsed on the urine-smelling pavement. He'd been knocked out for a moment. His body wasn't responding to him when he tried to get up. He could open his eyes, but couldn't see much past the bangs. "Get that body out of the way," the sentry shouted from above them. "Nikes, little brat." Someone pulled off his other shoe. The right one was already off for some reason. "Kill him the rest of the way first. That can't have been enough." "He's knocked out," the guy taking his shoes whined. "Can I keep him? I want to do something to him later." Before the man finished speaking, Ghost got himself up on his arms and scramble-crawled forward away from them. "Fuck, you didn't kill him enough!" They chased after him. Ghost got to his feet and darted into another adjacent building. Maybe this one would... He ducked gunshots coming from inside the room, huddling behind a counter, scraping his back against the ends of sticks, collected in a bucket. One of them was a piece of rebar. He grabbed it and lunged toward his pursuers as they appeared in the double doorway. 2 of them were armed with sticks, one of them long and thin for beating workforce. The other guy had a short, thick stick, and the third had a gun, which he was reloading. Ghost crushed the rebar into the hand on the gun, taking a blow to the left arm from the thin stick at the same time. The gun guy screamed a curse. The unexpected weight of the rebar made it swing down and through. Ghost stepped to create a natural figure 8, swinging it up toward the man with the long stick, doing a feint that made him back up. It was a bit long to use the way he was used to, with knives. He caught it by the middle, imagining it was 2 knives held up and down at once. At the same time, the guy with the thick stick had gotten behind him. They were all yelling at Ghost. Someone was saying, "It's the fucking Ghost!" The guy threw down the long stick and reached for Ghost as he kicked at him. Ghost dodged just slightly, making it whoosh past his hip. The man with the gun had dropped it, but he was picking it back up with his left hand. Ghost stabbed back with the rebar into the unarmed man's face, bursting through the nose and into his brain, probably. He staggered back as the man's face stuck to his rebar and realized the gunman was probably going to shoot at him. Fucking monster! The guy had the gun in his left hand now. Ghost couldn't reach the gunman from here, and the gun was already halfway up. A blast from somewhere behind Ghost went off, and shot went plunging into the man's face, ears, and chest. Mostly his chest. It knocked him back onto his ass. "You're welcome," Gray said loudly, patting Ghost's hair. Ghost could barely hear him through the earplugs. His rebar was still stuck in a guard's head. He put his shoeless left foot on the forehead and yanked it out hard. He smelled smoke and blood and shit, and he had the sense that the other shivers were crowding around. Ghost realized he was shaking, though the dripping rebar was stuck tight in a clammy, white-knuckled grip. His head hurt, but he grinned, panting. "We got the drugs," Buddy said. "3 armed guys? What the hell, Ghost?" Ray cuffed him on the back of the head. Ghost punched him in the kidney after he walked past. Gray grabbed him by the wrist and pulled him along toward the laundromat. "No time," he said. "There's a sentry," Ghost warned. "Not anymore." They stepped over the guy that had wanted to keep Ghost for later. People that tried that tended to end up blasted by a shotgun somehow. Gray let go as soon as they were out of the laundromat. "Come on, we gotta go by back ways," Ray said, pulling them off toward the south. The trip back was long. By the time they arrived at the Shiver compound, Ghost wasn't shaking. He was dizzy, though, with a pounding headache, and confused, and exhausted. "Can I have my gun back?" he asked Ray, noticing that he was flaunting it at him as he cleaned it. "You snooze, you lose," Ray said. "You weren't using it." Ghost shook his head. It ached too much to argue now. "Ghost, did you get split up?" Buddy said, catching up with him on the way to the rooms. "I heard you were fighting 1-on-3 when Gray got there." Ghost nodded. They moved past the rec room where Ray's friends were already celebrating. Ray was just disappearing into the buildings on the right where Old Man lived, probably going to report to him about the raid. "Don't you kinda need a doctor? You were shoeless near that meth lab. Isn't that supposed to be dangerous?" Ghost shook his head. "I don't think so." He glanced her over, but she looked uninjured. "Where did your shoes go?" "I got knocked out